Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. My brothers and sisters, this is where right and left come to try to be reasonable. Now, that is a far cry from our politics, which is now a full-blown battle of the fringes. I'm calling it MAGA versus mega. What is mega? I'll explain. But the headline is the Democrats won a lot of key races, right? Last night, Democrats won in New York City, New Jersey, Virginia, California, and a lot of other states. The real question, though, for me, is not who won, but what won. MAGA seems to have a mirror image. The pendulum has swung. MAGA is in power. MAGA must own a disappointing status quo. So the outrage always comes from the outside. That's now the left. And it's bigger, it's angrier, and it's deeper than we saw with MAGA. And I argue to you, just as unlikely to make changes that are better for the majority of us. New York City was a metaphor for this movement. And the mirror image mascot to Trump won, beating my brother Andrew and Curtis the Spoiler Sliwa last night handily and unsurprisingly, if only because we've seen this before. The grievance is real. The people in New York City and around this country who are demanding change are no more deplorable than MAGA ever was. Affordability is the rallying cry, but it does not mean simply the economy. It is code. It means break the system. It is time to take from the top so the rest can have a better life. Now, to some ears, that means socialism killing capitalism. To others, it just sounds fair. Now, both MAGA and mega, a bigger version of it, chose unconventional mascots. Outsiders with more personality than political pedigree who could promise everything because they had a record of nothing to judge the promises against. And both spout extreme and divisive things to blame what is actually wrong, they're right about that, on common enemies of the other side and the system, demanding big changes that likely won't happen. Sounds familiar, right? It's not about reasonable answers anymore than it was with MAGA. But mega is the bigger version, bigger attacks on the system. Forget about just tax cuts. They want to change the democracy. Socialism, not capitalism. Forget about a border wall and more enforcement. They want to defund the police and decriminalize a lot of violent actions. MAGA plays to white fright. Mega plays to free Palestine. And it seems like the fringes of both sides now are against the Jews, okay? And with mega, you're punishing the ruling class. Both are right about what feels wrong about the economic realities in America. And both are more about the anger than they are about the answers. MAGA and mega are about the anger, not the answers, okay? Don't take it from me. Take it from His Honor.
A great New Yorker once said that while you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. If that must be true, let the prose we write still rhyme, and let us build a shining city for all.
Okay, look, there was a lot of anger in the speech because the anger is what got him there, okay? The question is, who is they, right? And whose time is it no longer, and what will that look like? Now, that was a reference in there, which was a very weird mix. He just paraphrased Mario Cuomo and Ronald Reagan. I don't know if he knows that. I think he did because he was trying to be petty. But my father's line, again, I don't think it was an accident. I don't care what you think you know about the left, okay? This guy, AOC, Bernie, compared to my father, these are posers when it comes to being true democratic values, all right? My father was a doer and a fighter and a fixer. He loved America. He believed that he would never have become anything like he was able to become here. And he believed, and a big part of that was capitalism, and that diversity was our strength. And anyone looking to divide needed to be dealt with, okay? He was stronger than all of them combined, but sweeter as well. These are mean people. And that's why half the city came out against them. But they are right about what is wrong when it comes to affordability. The question is, do they want to make things right or worse? Three big points. MAGA and MEGA are following playbooks. Project 2025, you can say, oh, that's a boogeyman. No, it isn't. The choices are all over the Trump administration, and many of their missteps come from that kind of manifesto. MEGA, same thing. You see the Free Press? Came across an internal Democratic Socialists of America document saying that they see Zohran Mamdani's win, now, you know, the mayor-elect of New York City, as a sign that they're going to take over the Democratic Party over the next decade. They plan on surging their membership, like they did with foreign-born ethnics in outer boroughs, and running socialist candidates at the federal, state, and local level in Democratic primaries. Single Palestinian state replacing Israel. You okay with that? The abolition of the police and the U.S. empire. What does that even mean? The return of land to Native Americans and the right of all people to freedom of movement, meaning no borders, okay? Now, who did this appeal to? Newcomers, okay? 38% of people actually born in New York voted for Mamdani. 49% voted for my brother and for Sliwa. 85% of voters who lived here less than 5 years voted for Mamdani. 14% voted for Andrew, okay? The grievance is real, but you go out, look at who it is, and you will come to the decision. This is not about the many. It is about the few coming together, and now they become a majority, all right? And it is an unlikely coalition of foreign-born and disenfranchised with young members of the privileged classes who resent their privilege and their limited economic opportunities as they see it. Is that why the socialists picked a young guy who parrots the poison of the Free Palestine crew? Because it's in their playbook. Talk like this.
We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF.
Like, does that just make you uncomfortable? Like the phrase globalized intifada, from the river to the sea?
I know people for whom those things mean very different things. The very word has been used by the Holocaust Museum when translating the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
All right, look, Democrats have to make a choice. You know, you can sit there like that guy and just kind of maw through this nonsense talk, or they're going to have to figure out if they want to take a stand. But it's not easy to take a stand against a populist movement, okay? I believe that this guy in New York City is the same as Trump was. And both of them are putting out a signal. And the signal was, a lot of what I'm saying is kind of close to the line of unacceptable or ugly, but both of them wound up giving a suggestion that it was open season on minorities you don't like, whether they said it specifically or not. Literally today, swastikas were spray painted on a Jewish school in Brooklyn, okay? Now, do I see this as the work of Team Mamdani? No, but it doesn't have to be. Mamdani is not a Nazi, but is it a surprise that those who hate Jews feel they can now show it more easily? Same thing happened to minorities after MAGA, remember? Remember all the Asians getting beat up all of a sudden? Third point, the right is stuck. They have MAGA or nothing, okay? They got to dance with who brung them. The Democrats do have a choice. They won last night by doing a lot more than making people angry in New York City. 2 white women, first governor in Virginia, female, second in New Jersey, do not believe in socialism. They do not believe in using the word socialism. And they are not open to the idea of erasing Israel. Both were in Congress. Both are not talkers like Bernie or AOC. They're known as doers, who are known for collaboration. One was in the military, the other was in the CIA. They are about working from within. And they won by bigger margins than what we saw in New York City. Why? The majority in this country does not believe in extreme ideas and destroying the system. Now, I haven't mentioned Trump. Why? Because I don't think this was as simple as Trump bad. It's about more. It's deeper than that. But MAGA better realize they can no longer call facts fake news and expect the angry to acquiesce. Prices are not down. Tariffs and ICE takedowns were not a magic pill. Trump claimed today that gas prices are at a 20-year low thanks to him, and that he can expect them to go to $2 a gallon. He might as well said 2 cents. Gas prices are at the same place they were last year on average. BS like this is fuel for the mega fury that may be coming from MAGA in the midterms, unless these do-good Democrats like Spanberger and Sherrill can outshine this outrage machine and connect to the majority. Now, what did this mean last night for the people who are now so afraid of what it could mean, all right? That's why I invited Ben Shapiro. Thank you for being here. So, Answer that first question. What did last night in New York City, because I don't think Spanberger and Sherrill mean the same thing to you, nor does Proposition 50 in California. What did New York City mayor's race mean?
Well, I mean, it looks like a revenge candidacy, frankly. And I think that what you're seeing here, and what I was listening to what you were saying earlier about the amount of nervousness on one part of the population, the amount of aggression from the other side of the population, I think that's very, very real. I mean, I've been receiving texts all day long from friends who live here, Republicans and Democrats, saying, do I need to leave the city because I'm so concerned about the tenor of Mamdani and what he's going to do next. Now, honestly, the best hope for Mamdani is that the city council stopped him from doing many of the things that he wants to do, because if he were actually able to implement many of his plans, it would make him more unpopular. But I think that, as you say, it was an outrage candidacy. I think that because everybody is now in the business of humoring people's outrage and then telling them that only if they are given outsized power will that outrage be alleviated in some way. Because of that, people are bouncing back and forth, because the truth is that most of the problems in people's lives in a free country like the United States are actually not solvable by government. Most problems in individuals' lives are mostly solvable by them. And there are obviously problems that need to be handled by inflation would be a problem that needs to be handled by the government. But when it comes to the idea that pretty much all the wrongs in your life can be solved by the government, which is something Mamdani literally said on the stage last night. He said there's no problem too big for government and no problem too small for government to care about it. That should be terrifying to anybody who has any familiarity with totalitarian systems.
Terrifying. My initial pushback before the Free Press's story today was going to be, socialism, you may not like it, you may like it, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't horrify you, it shouldn't frighten you as a human being the way giving an opening to Islamist tendencies, making certain talk okay. But then I saw them kind of converge in that Free Press story. I never connect socialists to anti-Semites. Like, that's never been a thing for me. But within this same playbook, they talk about the issue.
Well,
Is that new?
Well, I don't think it is. I think that the sort of coalition that's formed around it is new, meaning that the sort of radical racialist coalition that's been built up, segmenting populations and by ethnicity, and then combining that with this socialist anti-capitalism movement. What that really is a grievance movement. It's a movement that says that there is a superstructure that has been holding you down. And Mamdani literally said this last night, and that you need to rise up and destroy that system. And that is terrifying because, as you say, the entire basis of a workable American politics is that if you work within the systems, then you will be able to effectuate change. And as we have actually given more and more power to governments, whether we're talking local governments or national governments, and those problems don't get solved, you have one of two solutions. One is to say maybe we should take the power away from the government and people should actually be left alone more. The other is to say, no, it's just the wrong people in charge and they need even more power in order to effectuate their will and fix all of your problems. And I think that right now it feels like a race to the bottom between a wide variety of characters, none of whom are saying the thing that no one wants to hear, which is government cannot actually solve all your problems. In many cases, government actually accentuates your problems. And what we really need is a culture of personal responsibility and a culture in which people actually make better decisions.
All right, speaking of better decisions, the Jews. 1 in 3.
This always goes well when
right?
The Jews.
You
yeah.
people.
Yeah.
The vote of 1 in 3 Jews for Mamdani. How do you explain that?
Well, I mean,
and by the way, over half of, almost half of his voters, period, said a big reason for their vote was his position on Israel.
Yes.
Which is weird in a New York City election period, even though, you do have a bigger population of Jews than you do anywhere else in the country, but it doesn't usually dominate our politics. But 1 in 3 Jews voting for Mamdani?
I mean, to really understand those sorts of polling numbers, you have to understand the breakdown inside the Jewish community. The Orthodox and conservative Jewish communities voted overwhelmingly for your brother, overwhelmingly. It was really, unaffiliated Jews, people who go to synagogue relatively infrequently, who sort of enjoy social justice politics at their local Reform or Reconstructionist synagogue, who voted in favor of Mamdani. And I think one of the things that when we talk about Jews as an ethnicity versus, say, as a religious community, it's easy to obscure who exactly is voting for what. If you're talking about an atheist who happens to be ethnically Jewish voting for Zohran Mamdani, that shouldn't be a particular shock. I'd be a little more shocked if people like me who wear yarmulkes started showing up en masse and voting for Zohran Mamdani, but I can guarantee you that probably 99.8% of that population went for your brother.
That's an interesting distinction. I appreciate that. I didn't see it that way. It's actually comforting. But the last point is, Ben, don't take this so seriously. They were demonizing this guy. You see how he's smiling all the time. It's just talk. Globalize the intifada. He says it means different things to different people. He's got to be respectful of his own background, but he's not one of those guys. He's not the Brotherhood.
I mean, very difficult for me to believe that when he was literally asked on national television whether Hamas should disarm, a position currently held, by the way, not just by the Israelis, by the American government, the Egyptian government, the Saudi government, the UAE government, the government of Bahrain, and the government of Qatar, by the way. And he refused to answer that question. That was the sole question about the Middle East, apparently, about which he holds no opinion whatsoever. But he does have an opinion about arresting the sitting prime minister of the state of Israel, who, like him or hate him, he has no right to actually arrest on American soil. You know, Mamdani is, I think, driven by this particular issue. It's why he got into politics in the first place. As a college member of Students for Justice in Palestine, it has been an animating issue for him forever. I would be shocked if it doesn't remain a core issue for him moving forward. And obviously, if you're Jewish living in the city and you're already worried about elevated rates of crime against you, which has been happening now for several years, I think that, let's put it this way, every Jew that I know in the city of New York feels significantly less safe today under a Mamdani administration than they do under Eric Adams or they would have under your brother.
But where are they safe? Because on the left fringe, you've got what we're seeing in New York City. On the right fringe, you got your former brothers there, you know, and sisters, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, that are rabidly anti-Semitic. What is going on here?
So, I mean, I think that one thing that ought to be noted here is that Mamdani was just elected mayor of New York. The people who you're talking about, who I'm speaking out very, very loudly against right now, that they actually do not have a foothold in elected office. There may be a couple of members of Congress who I think are sort of aligned with them, but the idea of a major national politician who's mirroring that agenda, that seems really outsized. Right now, President Trump obviously not anti-Semitic. I think the vice president is anti-Semitic. I don't think that the Speaker of the House, who spoke out against Tucker Carlson, and the Senate Majority Leader, both of whom spoke out against this, are anti-Semitic or even want to be associated with that kind of content. You're talking about commentators. You're not talking about elected officials. And so while I am deeply concerned about this, very, very so much so that I spoke out extensively about it this week and will continue to do so, I think that that's still a step removed from where the Democratic Party is, where it's become part and parcel of a large part of the progressive base elevating somebody like Zohran Mamdani. That was a feature, not a bug of his campaign. I think everyone outside of New York watching that race saw Mamdani say these insane things about the Middle East, about Israel, and they thought, how can he win in spite of that? And they missed the point that he won.
Especially here.
And they missed the point that he won because of that. I think one of the other perceptions that people miss is the fact that New York City is just as Muslim as it is Jewish. Right? 11% of the population here is Muslim, 11% of the population here is Jewish. And so the idea that he won, the Jewish city, I mean, again, then it's the Muslim city too.
And will become increasingly so. Ben Shapiro, appreciate you being here. You're always welcome to have the conversation. I would just say this, though. Who am I talking to? I'm talking to somebody who's known from the digital realm, just like these other commentators. You guys have a lot of power.
I'm not downplaying it.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm fighting it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, so let's take a quick break, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, you heard the concern, okay? That is legitimate concern. It's shared by a lot of people not named Shapiro, all right? However, a lot of people excited about this. And in fact, one of the leaders of the Democratic Party, and I believe a rising star in their ranks, thinks what's happening is great for the party. Congressman Khanna is excited, and he wants you to know why. Next.
New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change.
Tonight, we sent a message. They always say we're loud, but man, with this vote, you guys just screamed from the rooftops.
To everyone who didn't give up on this campaign, I say thank you.
Two very different branches of the Democratic Party were on display last night. Only one can win. Now, you're going to hear people say, no, we're a big tent. That is bullpucky. Do you understand? They're going to go with what gives them the best chance in the midterms. I think it's the populist movement, not what we saw with Sherrill and Spanberger. But I could be wrong. Somebody who's going to weigh in on this and help me understand how a Jay Jones winning in Virginia is good for Democrats after the things that he said and meant. Okay? Let's talk to someone who is definitely the face of the party's present and future. Members of Congress, Democrat, California, Khanna. Good to see you, sir.
Always a pleasure, Chris.
So, I know you could hit me with the Big Tent thing, but you're okay with this guy winning for Attorney General after what he said in those text messages and meant and wasn't 15 at the time?
Look, I didn't support him. I thought those text messages were
disqualifying.
Outrageous. But you look, well, it certainly didn't get my support because of them. I've condemned political violence unequivocally, and I try to be consistent about that. That's a red line for me. But overall, I mean, we had 3 candidates who won in Virginia and New Jersey and New York with a forward-looking vision, understanding the anger and angst that the American people face, that they see all this wealth piling up in my district. They see an AI revolution, a digital revolution. They don't feel included. They see the American dream slipping away. That's how Donald Trump campaigned. He said, I'm going to bring it back. He has his view of tariffs and cuts to immigration to do it. We have our vision on how to do it. But now we're at least talking about to the anxieties of the American people and offering solutions going forward.
Well, let's talk about the solutions. Socialism is on the agenda in New York City. And it's not just a word, right? It's a destination. You saw that piece in the Free Press, I'm sure, that they have their own playbook to take over your party and make it purely socialistic. And they picked a mascot who fills that bill perfectly in Mamdani. But you're okay with that because you supported him.
I did support him, but look, Chris, there are a lot of things people can call me. The one thing someone can't call me, a guy who represents Silicon Valley with 5 companies and 50-mile radius of $1 trillion and more, which is literally propping up the entire American economy, is a socialist. I believe in free enterprise. I believe in entrepreneurship. But here's what I believe. Because I believe that there are a lot of people who have been left out, whose rents are too high, housing costs are high, childcare is high, and I believe that the central issue of our times, much like the time with FDR, is how are we going to get the digital revolution to work for everyone? FDR had to make the industrial revolution work for everyone. And if you are not aware that there are a lot of Americans who are angry, who feel left out, whether they're in factory towns, whether they're in urban communities, whether they're in suburban communities, then you're not reading the pulse. And I think that these candidates were connected to a lot of the challenges.
But that was true
now,
with Trump and MAGA,
vision.
Ro. That was true about MAGA and Trump.
Yeah.
They were right about what was wrong and what they were pissed off about. And you guys said, but you can't vote for Trump. He says crazy things. He's got no pedigree. He's not qualified. He checks all the same boxes Mamdani does, and he never said what this guy says about people who are really comfortable without their being in Israel. And you endorsed it.
Well, look, I believe about Trump that he asked a lot of the right questions, and that I criticized him because I didn't think tariffs were going to work. I still don't think tariffs are going to work. And I didn't think that his blanket attacks on universities are going to work. But did Trump channel a sense that the American dream had left and he was going to bring it back? That's how he won 2 terms. And I think the Democratic Party needs to build a broad coalition about restoring the American dream. And look, just like FDR, he had a very broad coalition that included many, many folks, although in a way that was going to reindustrialize the country, bring economic prosperity back. I think that needs to be the Democratic approach.
I'm with you. And Ro, you are not this way, but what do you say to people who say, Ro Khanna, I like you. You seem to be a unifier, but you just celebrated a guy who's made it open season on coming after us because he's been too comforting of our enemies. And I'm afraid. What do you say?
I would say I appreciate that, and look at what I'm saying. Judge me on my own words. For example, in the Middle East, I've said that Israel has the right to exist securely as a Jewish democratic state. I want a Palestinian state without Hamas, which is demilitarized, that exists in a 2-state solution. I spoke at the Council of Foreign Relations. I said I have a new vision. They said that's the same thing George W. Bush was saying. And so that's American foreign policy which we can go towards. I believe that we need to have innovation and economic growth across this country. Now, I want to tax the billionaires more, and I want Medicare for all and universal child care. We may disagree. But look, the one thing I will say is we need people who are going to bring this country together, who are going to recognize that someone doesn't have all the answers and the truth. And I'm going to be someone who listens and engages even when I disagree.
And I love that about you, Ro. And it doesn't matter if I like your choices or you like mine. I'm always here for the conversation, and I wish you well. Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you for coming on to make the case.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
but tell your boy not to mix Reagan with my father again when he's putting the lines together. He's got to know better than that.
Barry, you know my admiration for your father.
But you're living it.
He's one of my favorite politicians.
But you're living it. You believe the same. You believe the same things. Ro, be well. Take care of yourself. All right. President Trump's claim that he has the ultimate authority to impose tariffs. Listen, I don't buy it. Okay. Now, was this Supreme Court asking questions today that suggest they might? Yeah. Were the lawyers for the government able to convince them that, hey, if the Congress isn't saying anything about it, neither should you. Shame on Congress, by the way, but the supreme legal mind's given us a sense of where we are. Next. Now look, I thought it was crazy that the Trump administration challenged the ability to use the reserve funds for food stamps. And I was right. I thought it was crazy for them to argue that a president has complete authority to impose tariffs across the globe when taxation belongs to Congress. But maybe I was wrong. Lawyers for the government argued that Trump's emergency declaration is not for them to question, that the president decides what an emergency is when it comes to tariffs or any power that was given to him by Congress, and Congress isn't saying anything, so neither should they. We don't know what the court is going to decide, but I do have people who can make a much better guess than I can. Albany Law School professor Ray Brescia, former Trump attorney Jesse Binnall. Ray, I start with you. It's good to have you. Thank you very much. My sister and my brother will say hello because they are alumni of your institution. So my analysis is on just the simple levels. The court may well say here, hey, if Congress isn't up in arms about it, they gave them the power. They must be okay with it. It's a political question, not a legal one. What's the other side, Professor?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any issue about political question. I was surprised to hear that the justices really didn't talk that much about emergency powers. Mm-hmm. This was a very straightforward argument about text, context, and what authority the president has in this setting. So I was surprised by that. I really thought there was going to be more about, deference to the president in an emergency situation. There's very little about that. And I think that should not mean that the president is automatically going to win. I think if this was about how much power the president has, how much emergency power the president has, I think that the liberals on the court would really be on their heels. But this is really going to play out in the middle of the court, as a lot of things do. The so-called middle of the court, the relative middle of the court, with, I think, the Chief Justice, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, really being the swings here. And it's hard to say how this is going to go. I think that if the court were simply to follow its own recent press-like cases like Biden v. Nebraska, this would be a slam dunk against the president. The president's exercise of power.
So Sotomayor, the justice, obviously a liberal on the court, seemed to voice the perspective that you're saying may be their strongest side for that middle left part of the court that's left. Here's what she said.
It's a congressional power, not a presidential power to tax. And you want to say tariffs are not taxes, but that's exactly what they are. I don't understand this argument that it's equivalent, or that foreign powers or even an emergency can do away with the major questions doctrine.
The court has never applied the major questions doctrine in the foreign policy context.
But we
That's
have,
the emergency context, not the foreign policy
counsel,
context.
We have never applied it to foreign affairs, but this is a tariff. This is a tax.
So, Jesse, what do you think the best reckoning is of the idea that the president has absolute power to decide tariffs?
Well, the president has the absolute power to decide tariffs in this case where you have an emergency, and it has to be that way. When you have a statute like that is being interpreted in this case, a statute that is meant for emergencies, you cannot then limit and say that it doesn't apply to tariffs. It very specifically mentions, for instance, the power to regulate. And a tariff in this case isn't being used like a tax in this means. It's meant to regulate commerce and try to affect the president's ability to regulate foreign affairs. And so when there's something, for instance, like a fentanyl crisis that's going on right now, and the president is trying to say that you, in order to try to stop fentanyl from coming over the border, the best way to do that is with a tariff. That's something that falls very much within the statutory scheme that we see here.
Okay, so is this then a question, Jesse, of overreach? I'm with you on the fentanyl, but he tariffs everybody everywhere all at once because he said trade deals have been unfair. How is that an emergency?
Well, it's an emergency, for instance, when you have China that's using its power and the fact that it doesn't have to go through Congress in order to very aggressively try to attack the United States economically in many ways. And you have other countries that are acting very, very aggressively. So if you take that regulatory tariff regime that we see here, the statute does not prohibit using it in this way. The statute is very inclusive in the way that it lists what the president is able to do in emergency situations. It's a toolbox. It's not a straitjacket.
Professor,
If
last word on, please, last word on what an emergency is.
Is that for me?
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, I think that President Trump would love to have the powers that President Xi has. That's the problem. We don't live in China. We're not subject to those types of authoritarian powers. And here, the Constitution gives Congress the power to regulate, power to impose tariffs. What it granted the president was the power to regulate foreign commerce, right? And the argument from the Solicitor General's perspective, well, regulate means tariff. Well, Congress knows how to impose a tariff. They do it in dozens of other statutes. They gave the president under the statute in question, under AIPA, about 9 different powers. Not one of them said the power to impose tariffs. So when Congress leaves something out that they know how to put in, that means they didn't mean to give it to the president. They didn't mean to give that power to the president. And if the best the Solicitor General can do is the term regulate is kind of ambiguous and it might stretch to include tariffs. Well, if it's ambiguous, then it falls into the major questions doctrine, which is what the Chief Justice was asking about. And I'm not surprised at that. He wrote the Biden v. Nebraska decision on the student loan forgiveness case. And there he said, when the statute says you can modify something, that doesn't mean that you can suspend it or forgive it. Right? So regulate doesn't mean impose tariffs. And I think that it's going to be a very interesting result, no matter what happens.
Let me jump. Hopefully they'll put it out sooner rather than later, guys, because we need it to be decided. They can't take their time like they like to and wait for us to forget about it. Professor Brescia, thank you very much. Professor Binnall, thank you very much. Good to have you both, as always. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So, somebody I respect, all right? Now, here's one issue we got to get straight in New York City and all over the country. Where are we on policing, okay? Does a chief who just retired, okay, had nothing to do with this election, what is the reality of concern of the police that the new mayor is against them? Are they falling for politics, or is there something here that is worth being concerned about in this city, but also happening across the country? The former NYPD chief of the department has things to say, and Chief Shell is here next.
Safety and justice will go hand in hand as we work with police officers to reduce crime and create a department of community safety that tackles the mental health crisis and homelessness crises head on.
Okay, sounds pretty good. All right, now, the mayor-elect also said he supported defunding the police, called them anti-gay, racist, and a threat to public safety. He said in his acceptance speech that he now wants to work with the police, though, as you just heard. So, should we just take his word now? Different time, different position? Let's ask the man who just stepped down as NYPD Chief of Department, John Chell. Now, very important, Chief. Good to see you.
Yep.
Thank you for your service. Did not retire because of the election. You were going to retire anyway.
Yes, I was leaving anyway.
Just to keep you clean on that. So, here, you just said what you want to hear. All good.
Well, I'm a firm believer that your DNA is your DNA. You are who you are. So congratulations to him last night. Great campaign. You ran a great campaign. But now the speech last night kind of switched gears on us, a different person. So that's why I say your DNA is your DNA. Now let's get to the rhetoric. You just showed what he said about the police department. He apologized for that, but we're not wicked and corrupt amongst other things. He aligned himself with the Democratic Socialists of America. Their platform is real out there. Basically, as public safety, do away with prisons and the cops are bad. So he aligns with that. Now look at what he wants to do crime-wise. Oh, I didn't say I didn't want to do a misdemeanors, low-level crime. Okay, well, yeah, explain that. I didn't say get rid of prostitution, but let's decriminalize it. Let's empty Rikers Island. Let's keep staffing the way it is. Now, follow that. So if we lose, we could lose almost 4,000 cops in January. So are you saying you'll go down to 30,000 cops, but your community action teams will replace some of those services? That sounds great, but let's see it in action. So your rhetoric is your rhetoric, and the last one backbreaker will be the Civilian Complaint Review Board.
Why? Because that sounds good to a lot of people. Get the communities involved.
Right, so you make a complaint against a cop. You have these young investigators that do not like the police department to begin with, okay? But the final adjudication lies with the police commissioner now. If you put it in their hands, cops will not stay to jeopardize their job. Because the police commissioner says, well, you know, I know you want them terminated, but I see it differently. We'll render punishment this way. But if you leave it up to them, no cop over 20 years that remotely goes out in the street is going to take that chance for their pension, their family, and their lives. That will be a backbreaker. Now, he's on...
Well, hold on. Because people will say, yeah, then don't do anything that gets you brought in front of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and you don't have to worry about it.
Right. Mistakes are hard sometimes, easier said than done. If you want a police department that's going to be just purely reactive and not take a chance. Remember a couple years ago, the cop got the water poured on his head and stood there? You want to go back to that?
No.
Because public safety is the foundation of the city, and we can't go backwards. Now, we went through bail reform and all that crazy stuff. We kind of got it back. We're fighting. I don't know if we can come back a second time. We're already down cops. He does not want to hire more cops. You got to really listen real carefully what he says.
The brothers and sisters have had lots of politicians who they don't like and who are not good for them. Why is this any different?
Because his rhetoric in terms of he doesn't want to hire more cops, his rhetoric against us, we never had an elected official come in and say what he said about us. Now, he apologized. Okay, fine. But the CCRB thing, that is really scary for the rank and file, and people want to come on the job. And we're already having a retention problem. We did a good job recruiting this year. What's going to happen now? The cop's out of a contract. Do you think he's going to pay them a great contract? No. I don't think he is. But it remains to be seen. So it remains to be seen is the phrase here. So there's a storm brewing. Is it going to rain? Is it going to pour? Is it going to drizzle? We'll find out in January. Look, you know, I made a phrase today. He wants to freeze rent for people. Okay, that sounds great. Not good for the landlord. But he's got to pay the rent come January 2nd. All these things he's promising, all these things he's backtracked on, okay, fine. But the rent is due January 2nd. Let's see what happens.
Do you wish you were still on the job for this period, or are you happy you're going to be watching it?
I'm happy I'm going to be sitting this one out. And I think I might be more influential outside than inside, if that makes sense. I could speak as a cop of 32 years. I've been in that locker room. I know how they feel. I could speak on it. But I'm going to be fair to him also. Because if he does well, right, I'm a New Yorker. If he does well, we do well. So let's root for him. Like I say, did a great campaign, great job. Went from 1% to 1 million voters. Now the people who voted for him, they're going to want their free stuff. I don't know what the line is. Is it March? Is it June?
They're going to want things. And the guys who are against him, I'm not talking about my brother, but the president of the United States. What I don't want to see is NYPD having to deal with federal agencies who are on the ground, putting them in compromised positions and animosity. That's what I'm worried about.
And if the message isn't clear on that, if that did happen, and there's no unity between the police commissioner, if his commissioner Tish or someone else, and City Hall, we're going to be in the middle, to your point. And it's going to be a disaster. And I think Eric Adams' legacy might be reshaped if things go wrong this time next year. It depends.
I mean, look, whenever somebody's out, it's never as bad as it was when they were in there. You know, I mean, we've lived that many times over. But, you know, these are unusual times. Adams was an unusual proposition as mayor as well. But I'll tell you, what we need more of is what you've done over all these decades and the clarity you bring to the mission and purpose, but also the honesty of what works and what doesn't. And you are always welcome.
No, thank you, Chris. I appreciate the platform. I'm here to help, but I also got to speak truth to what I say, and then we can meet in the middle like we just had a conversation. Let's be practical, put it out to the people, and we can start the conversation.
100%. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you for helping us at NewsNation.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, all the best to you. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Here's the problem. I totally am down with the idea that after the campaign is over, you've got to give people a chance, all right? And that's what it's about. That's when it was about right and wrong. We're not about that anymore. Certainly our campaigns aren't. It's all about right versus left and good and evil in their estimation. And I don't think that's why, I do believe that's why things don't calm down after elections anymore, because it was never about answers. It was never about coming together. It was always about advantage and which side is worse. And right now we got a full-blown battle of the fringes. And you better hold on to your seats. Now, the good news is, NewsNation will keep digging into it as only we can and have the conversation with both sides. Conversation is the cure, and Leland Vittert was prove that to you right now.
You are stealing my not left versus right, right versus wrong line.
I took it
purposing it and making it better.
I took it from you, and I wish I could have taken your mustache instead, the ability to grow one.
We still have to deal with this all of November, don't we?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, just so long as we and the viewers are clear. Good to see you, my friend.